Hey there, welcome back to the layout once again. We have another layout update today, and there's a few things to talk about. Not a ton has changed per usual, but I do want to show you what I've been working on with regards to some of the scenery prep, as you see over here. I've also got some new rolling stock and a new locomotive, so we'll take a look at those things as well. So first things first, you guys might notice a bit of a difference over here. These are my big rock cuts on the upper horseshoe curve of Crawford Hill. And as I started a bit of Sculptamold, I was just trying to fill in cracks, and I even started one of the rock cuts there, just on the paper. Even though I had put the wood glue on here, so you can see that this paper is sort of shiny now. I put wood glue on it to sort of almost waterproof it, and it kind of stiffens it up as well. But as I started to put the Sculptamold on, it started to warp, and the problem with the Sculptamold is once it warps the paper, the Sculptamold starts to dry and set pretty quickly, so then it actually holds that shape. Whereas the glue, I've also noticed when I put the glue on the paper first, it warps as well, but then the glue dries out in a very thin layer, and then it actually causes the paper to become very tight and it smooths out. So the Sculptamold's very different, and for that reason I have started to put cardboard on the faces of my rock cuts in preparation for facing those with plaster. So you'll see we have the 3 tiers here, and it looks kind of messy, right? I got this scraggly Sculptamold over here. The reason I have it like that is because I was just filling in some cracks and all the holes and stuff like that. And this area doesn't need a ton of Sculptamold. I'm trying to limit the weight up here on the upper level since there's no legs under it. I mean, there's no threat of collapse, but it just lets my mind rest a little bit easier knowing that we're limiting the amount of mass we have up here. So if I don't need a full layer of Sculptamold, then I'm not going to do it. There's still quite a bit to do over here, but that's the reason that this section, at least here, just kind of looks thin and spotty. But I've been using the Sculptamold to fill in cracks and stuff like you see right there. I also refaced this cut in the middle and gave it a bit more of a plateau on the top here, which is more realistic for the actual Crawford Hill. And actually, I'll put you guys right here, and I'm going to throw up a photo that I took in 2014 here, and you'll see that you can actually really see the resemblance between the two scenes. So it's not exactly the same. If we step up a little higher here, you'll of course realize that there's not a second set of rock cuts back that way. That's actually just another track up there. But when you're down at track level, the perspective remains pretty much the same. So this is looking pretty cool, and I'm glad that I put the cardboard on the face there, because that's going to keep those cuts very straight when I start to put the plaster on. And what I'm doing for that, this is just sort of a test piece, what I was trying to figure out what texture I could get with the rocks. I am doing this with my go-to 3M patch plus primer material. The rock cuts won't look exactly like this. I was testing a variety of textures, so it's probably not going to be this mixed of a look, but sort of like in this area is what I'm going for, maybe with a little bit of these more jagged rocks towards the top of some of those cuts, just from some photos that I've been looking at. That's actually pretty close, and the color, it's very light, almost white, but you do see the tan in there, so I'll probably adjust the color a little bit when I get to it, but I'll be doing the exact same thing on all the cardboard you see there. You'll also see that I have started to add our little road here. These will just be wooden grade crossing panels, and I just did this with some cardboard on top, and then I smoothed it out with Sculptamold and then some of that patch plus primer material to fill in some of the holes. And I haven't sanded any of this stuff you see yet, so I'll be going back and smoothing it out so that it looks good once we put some dirt on it. But now you get a sense of where that road's going to go, how the rock cuts should really look, and we'll take a look back here really quick. This is what I've been working with using the Sculptamold. So this looks pretty good too. Not quite the texture I'm looking for, but I do like the way this turned out. It just took a lot of work to get it to look like that. So I'm going to keep this rock facing as Sculptamold, but elsewhere I'm going to use that patch plus primer. This isn't painted either. I was testing out stains and things like that, so it looks really stupid right now, but don't worry, I'll fix that. Quite a few other things to do before I really get to scenery in here. I need to put the missing ties in here. I need to solder those joints to make sure they stay straight. Still a few other things to do. You'll see more of that sculpt-a-mold material. This was a test section of rocks that I did. These have been painted, and these are a little bit rougher than most of the rock cuts. So there's different kinds of rock cuts on Crawford Hill. Some of them are more natural looking, some smoother and more machine cut. So I'm just working on the rocks first, and then I'll come in with the dirt around it, and then grass and stuff like that. And here's a look at, again, nothing great, but you'll see this is me making rocks with the Patch Plus primer. You can't really see it because there's all that stuff around it. So actually, I don't even know why I showed you that, because that looks terrible. But I assure you, in person, these actually look pretty good for the cuts or the rocks that you see in these sort of trench areas in a few places. So that didn't make a lot of sense, but you'll have to trust me with the direction I'm going with those. And oh, you'll also see, as I turn around, I have the drywall up there. I'm still working on filling in the cracks and edges and all that, but you can see that makes quite the difference, and I will be sure to get that wall all painted soon as well once I get that sanded. But now we don't have the exposed wall interior, which is nice. It really creates sort of a closed off, complete layout feel. And this is one of the things I've been working on last night and this morning, because you'll notice that the cardboard facing that I talked about sort of stops right here, and then the paper scenery in here isn't filled in yet. And the reason for that is that I have to work on the tunnel liner in here. So the problem with this tunnel is that it's short, so you can see through to the other side, and not only that, you'll see that it's curved as well. So I've been trying to figure out a way to create a curved tunnel liner, not to mention the tunnel portals themselves, but the liner will be kind of a challenge. But you can see how I've started to do this. I got some inspiration from a model railroader forum. Some guy basically did what I've done here with foam core. So I'm just doing this out of cardboard. I created a couple of curved feet, you can see at the bottom, and then I have 7 ribs here that go through to the other side as well, and I just put them along those feet. And the interior, if you can imagine, I'm going to take strips of sort of like a thick paper, some pretty thin strips, and just sort of put those along the wall, then the roof. And they have to be thin, because if you can imagine taking a big wide flat sheet of paper and trying to put that in a curved, like a double curved roof to a tunnel, it doesn't really curve that well. So I have to do that in thin strips. Then I'll probably face that with some tape, and then on top of that I'll put some plaster in there and try to smooth it out as best as I can. And then I need to put the tunnel portals on as well. So that is just the start of my curved tunnel portal, or tunnel liner I should say. But you can see that that's going to look pretty good. I think I have plenty of clearance for double stacks, auto racks, and some of the bigger cars, so I've made sure to give it clearance. And of course I have to make the cardboard ribs a little bigger than the actual liner will be, because there's going to be some plaster and paper in there as well. Not a ton, but just a little bit. So that's all I've been working on with the scenery so far. So nothing's really happened that's too exciting. Again, starting to fill in cracks here. But once I get the rock faces textured, then it is on to dirt and grass, and I'll be ready for that. And then of course I need to touch up the track, paint the rails and all that, which I've already started in some areas. So and that's the other reason I've been working on the tunnel liner here, is because I need to get the rails painted, which I've already done, and then I need to get the ballast in there so that I don't have to be reaching in there with a spoon once the liner's in. So I need the scenery inside to be finished before I can complete the tunnel. Alright, so that was quite a bit of information on some pretty boring stuff, but I have some new cars. Let me turn around, I'm sorry. I left them over here. So there's a couple over here that I got. So new CN High-Cube box car from Walther's Mainline. And remember, all these cars that I get, I plan on weathering and selling, so be on the lookout for those. I don't have anything for sale this week. I was just on spring break, so I took a bit of time off to just focus on the layout and not weathering. I think you guys saw these two High-Cube box cars, one from Athearn, one from Walther's. I got another Scale Trains rivet counter Gunderson hopper here for BNSF, so one with the ribs on the side, one without, and that's my old BN car that you've probably seen before. And then really quick before we move on, I should mention I've decided to sort of rearrange some things here in the industry area. The last couple times on the live stream I've been kind of messing around with switching in here, and another YouTuber had suggested that I need a drill track so that when I am maneuvering cars from the trailing point spurs that you see over here, because I need to bring these cars out somehow, and they have to come this way. Originally I had this third track out here. This was for tank car unloading for the brewery, but it was weird because in order to switch the cars that are back behind me, I'd have to take the tank cars out of this track, put them on another track, and then use this as a drill track, which likely would never happen in the real world. So I've decided to just sort of scrap this track here as a part of the brewery and instead use it just for everyday switching in here. So it's sort of a multi-purpose track now, but it's no big deal because we actually still, I mean, of course you don't want to get rid of car spots, but we have two for unloading here, plus a third for storage, and then we can fit as many as 4 cars in this middle track, which is plenty to do with the brewery. And then I plan on extending this track a little bit past the end of the building and into the parking lot, just for a little more operability, and it'd be kind of cool to have a paved section of track out here where we might have a locomotive or a car sitting from time to time. So that is what is happening there. If we turn this way, a few more cars here. You'll see I got a Tangent Scale Models UP hopper. That is the repaint paint scheme. Procore cylindrical hopper as well. That'll be fun to weather. ADM tank car from Atlas, I think. And then another Canada cylindrical hopper. This one I'm keeping. I really liked the last one I did, and I want one for myself, so I'm going to keep that. So that is what we got with the rolling stock. Here's the other end of that tunnel, so you can see that. There's the curved liner. That'll be kind of cool to look at. Another look, here's some more cardboard facing I've done on the other side of the peninsula. And then moving this way, I got those decals finally for my Walthers Gevo here. I actually needed 2 decal sheets, which isn't exactly cost effective, but I wanted this to be as accurate as possible. So this decal sheet I wanted for the AC decals that you see on the front pilot of these locomotives. So there's those guys there with the sort of the orange swooshy looking thing there. So those go on the front. And honestly, that's really all I need from this. I think these circle decals here as well. And then all of the data and warning decals come from this, the Gevo data sheet from Microscale. And then I've had these details for a long time. I was holding off on doing these because I want to get the decals installed first. This is a Scale Trains Tier 4 Gevo detail kit, but it has all the details I will need to detail this guy. Still got to figure out the best way to do this. I'm probably going to create a styrene template for most of the grab irons to paint those. Not really sure. So if you guys have any tips or have done this before, go ahead and let me know. But I'll be getting to that pretty soon, and I plan on having a video of that as well. And then finally, this is actually my dad's Tier 4 Canadian National ET44AC. He just picked this up, and it's going to live here on the layout, of course. But it's pretty cool. I had a Canadian National project locomotive that I never finished, so I sold that. But I really like this paint scheme. So this is a pretty cool locomotive. This is the 3rd run from Scale Trains. And some of the cool Canadian National details you get are the marker light on the front there. Front and rear, I should say. There's rear ditch lights as well. And then what's really cool is that the walkway tread is see-through, which is a Canadian National specific detail, so that the ice and snow can escape the walkways during winter months. You'll see same thing from the 2nd run of these units. You can see that that X bracing inside the radiator cab pretty clearly. And then on the back you have the rock pilot for CN, and then as I already pointed out, there's also a marker light on the rear. So this thing is packed full of details, has great sound. This one has the Look Sound version 5 decoder, I think, according to the manual. So anyway, it's a great locomotive. I'll try to throw some running clips in here. So that's great to have. And really, I think that's all I have to share for today, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed. I'll be sure to get a bit more progress done for you guys next time. I'll have some weathering to share in the next update, I'm sure. And I should be getting to some actual scenery pretty soon up here on the upper level. And yeah, so as always, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, and I will see you next time.